Welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Alexa Milne with CFIB. We're very happy to be here today to present your digital strategy webinar. I will now introduce Corinne Pullman, our Senior Vice President and National Affairs and Partnerships with CFIB. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Alexa, and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for one of our webinars where we're looking at sort of ways that we can provide advice to you as small business owners. This is just a quick slide to sort of share with you some of the things that we do at CFIB. I think many of you know that already. We provide a lot of advocacy work and savings programs, but we also pride ourselves in providing advice and help when you need them. So in that context, this webinar today was bringing together a group of individuals who are going to introduce themselves in a moment to help you with some digital tools and how to get your business up and running in that regard. So with no further ado, and to make the best use of this time, I am going to turn it over to Susan MacArthur, who's going to introduce the rest of the team and how today's going to run.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much to Corinne and the team at CFIB. I thought what I'd do is give everyone a little bit of background on how the participants of this webinar came together. So back in mid-March, Daniel, his partner Mo, and I were working on some startup ideas when COVID hit. We were worried about our local businesses having to be locked down, and so we came up with the concept of Distantly as a way that technology and digital tools could help small local businesses engage their customers and provide a platform for them to reach out to their customers to support them during lockdown. As we were thinking about this, we brought together a grassroots team to actually bring this idea to life. During that time, we met Daryl at Digital Main Street, who is a very important partner and helped us reach out to all the different BIAs, and Stacy Irvine, who is a co-owner of Totem, who really helped us shape the product in terms of what a small business would be useful to a small business. So with that, we brought this all together and worked diligently, really pro bono, for about 2 weeks, and Distantly was announced by Mayor Tory on April 19th. So what we saw, which was really interesting, was that Distantly became very popular in a number of local businesses as a way for them to engage their local communities. And so we then brought on Jen Stasiewicz to help us really take the concept of Distantly to the next step. So what we've done here, and our mission and our concept all along, has been what can we do to help small local businesses learn about and use digital tools that can help them add value to their businesses and their clients. So the lineup here really is about our grassroots team who came together for Distantly and giving additional advice and help to you as a small business owner so that you can use additional digital tools to help during this continued difficult time of COVID. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having us, CFIB. It's quite an honor to be in front of your audience again. I know we spoke to a handful of you guys back on July 9th, but it's fantastic that we're here again to dig a little bit deeper on a number of different fronts that are hopefully going to be very helpful to your business as it grows into the future. I wanted to spend a minute just doing a content overview. Thank you, Susan, for all of your introductions and the context. I'm Jennifer, the CEO of Distantly. Next, you're going to be hearing from Daryl from Digital Main Street. He's going to be talking about websites and some of the digital tools that he's seeing in the market and that Digital Main Street is familiar with and can be helpful in. Then we're going to move over to Daniel from Buildable, and he's also a founder of Distantly. He's going to be really digging into e-commerce, payments, and some social media strategies. You'll hear from me again, more on crowdfunding. We're going to take also a moment to hand the floor over to Stacy Irvine, who is a co-owner and founder of Totem. She's going to be talking about her experience with Distantly and the platform in general. And then we'll wrap up with talking about what Distantly is going to look like in the future. We're calling it Distantly version 2, which is really about our growth plans and some other things that we're working on to help companies that are on the platform. And then we'll wrap it up with some closing remarks and question Q&A time. There's also going to be some Q&A time sprinkled throughout the agenda today. So if you have questions kind of along the way, there will be some opportunities throughout to start asking those. But if your question isn't addressed throughout the agenda, don't worry, we will be having another Q&A session at the very end of the session. So the first person that's up is going to be Daryl from Digital Main Street. He's going to be talking about websites and digital tools. So I'll hand it over to Daryl at this point. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Jen. Just wanted to thank the team at Distantly, CFIB, and everyone for allowing me to kind of jump on here and share some thoughts with you. Just wanted to give you kind of the quick Coles notes on Digital Main Street. So we're a nonprofit that exists. We're based in Toronto. Currently with a very, very heavy presence in Ontario, but we are literally in the process right now of expanding this across Canada. So we should be nationwide within the next month or so, give or take. But essentially what we do is we exist to solely help small business grow through the adoption of digital tools and technologies. We've been around for almost about 5 years now, and we've been fortunate enough to work with about 25,000 small businesses across the country. So it's given us a lot of insight, a lot of different data points, a lot of challenges, but a lot of interesting opportunity to look at, really what's impacting the small business community in a variety of industries as well. So retail, personal service, professional service, full mixed bag. So what I want to chat about, we're going to talk about websites today, but I'm not going to touch on any specific digital tools, just more of a couple concepts that I think are very, very relevant right now. So obviously during COVID, everyone has had to pivot. There's been a ton of change. There's been, it's been the craziest time I think any of us have ever experienced. I think the one thing that every business owner needs to keep in mind right now more than ever is how important the customer is. The folks that are speaking after me are going to touch on this as well. But I think whether it's your website, whether it's your various digital tools, whatever it is that you're using for your business, I think you've really got to kind of have that lens right now. How are you engaging with your customers? What is that method of customer engagement? How often? What's the cadence? And really just looking at it from that lens. And I think, if you use your website as a marketing tool with that kind of that viewpoint on it, I think that you'll see, your engagement with your customers increase, and I think that you'll see just overall kind of success increase across the board. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, cool. So what we did here is we put together a table of all the most popular website builders, we'll call them, different options. And so we did this for two reasons. One is to kind of show you guys the full spectrum of options that are available, but also to kind of show you how crazy the marketplace is right now in terms of, the options and the varieties that are available. So, you look at every single one of these, whether it's Squarespace, Wix, Google's websites, Facebook shops, and business pages, Shopify, a standard WordPress site. And you look at kind of the columns for yes, no, and everything. Is a lot of them are very, very similar. And that's one of the challenges is, you look at these platforms nowadays and you look at the challenges that we face as a small business community trying to identify what the best platform is. Oftentimes when we're speaking to small businesses, a lot of the challenges they face is just, how do I do that self-assessment? How do I determine what platform is the best for me? So what we tried to do here was put together some of the most important things. So looking at, the different capabilities, the functionality, kind of trying to grade it on a scale of ease of use. Yeah, and really just wanted to highlight, it's obviously full disclosure, Shopify is a partner of Digital Main Streets, but we don't identify them as kind of our top pick because of that. It's it's because of the way that they approach small business. So you look at their product suite, they've got themes for every type of business, whether you're a service-based business, a restaurant, a small just regular retail boutique. They've got hardware that caters to small business. They've got software, they've got loyalty programs, gift cards. They really have that full suite. So you can actually get up and, building through Shopify in, a matter of hours if you kind of have a basic understanding of the platform. And I do just kind of want to quickly put out there, in Ontario right now, and I emphasize right now because we're in the process of expanding it, we are running a program through Digital Main Street called Shop Here, which provides small business owners with free Shopify stores. We actually have a team of students that will build them. So right now I just want to emphasize it is Ontario specific, but we, as soon as probably, next week to the week after, we will be expanding that across Canada. But yeah, just looking at this, I think, the advice I want to leave the businesses with on this call is, don't think of digital transformation or digital tools or, kind of digital adoption as a platform or a piece of hardware or a piece of software. You can have the fanciest point of sale system, the nicest designed website, but if you don't know how to use them and you're not using them to engage your customers, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So really, step back, kind of put the lens from a customer focused standpoint. Look at that customer engagement piece, look at how you're using your different tools and your platforms to engage your customers, but then also look at what are the tools that you can use to just, run your business more effectively, whether it's some of the stuff that, Daniel and the team are going to talk about next, or a miscellaneous tool that we're not going to mention tonight. Really just make sure that you're not doing something just for the sake of doing it. I think that's kind of the last thing I want to leave you with is don't just think that by buying a new piece of hardware that you're now you're adopting digital and you're kind of in that mindset. I think you've really got to embrace the concept overall and look at how you as a business owner buy into this mindset of digital transformation and look at how it can apply to every different facet of your business. And I think that's what I wanted to leave you guys with today. So I think Daniel's up. Oh no, sorry, I lied. I do have another slide. I'm not used to not controlling my slide. And again, looking at kind of the different categories of things that can help your business and the way digital can help your business. It ties into what I was just saying. So there's a ton of stuff for your website, tools and stuff that can help you design and build websites, tools that can help you run analytics campaigns through Google Analytics or other on your website. Really looking at making sure, again, looking at the customer experience, making sure that you're getting the right traffic to your website. You're not just getting it's a quality over quantity approach in a lot of cases. A lot of tools around social media, whether it's strategy, planning, analytics, creating content. You've got a ton of tools out there that can help you with that. Data protection is a passive one. So looking at kind of the privacy standpoint now from a security standpoint, there's lots of unfortunate attacks and breaches out there. So, really making sure that you're protected and your customers' data is protected. The other thing I want to add to this is, looking at how you can use digital from an operational standpoint. So, whether you're doing your accounting manually or, using a tool, like QuickBooks or any of the comparables, or, whether you're using, productivity software within your team, whether it's a project management tool, an HRIS online HR platform, or, the different facets of tools that you can still use in a digital capacity to help run your business in a more productive and more efficient way. And again, just final thought, is same as before, is, really kind of look at this concept of digital adoption as an overarching kind of mindset and framework for how you can run your business, not just in the sexy kind of popular words like website, e-commerce, social media, etc. And I think you'll find that that kind of ease of use piece we talked about is it becomes a lot easier, but I think it'll also become a lot clearer to determine what you want and what you need and what you're really going to kind of look to adopt in your business. Next slide, I think. Yep. Oh, Daniel. Okay, cool. I will jump off and let Daniel, the man behind Buildable, jump in.
Thanks, Daryl. Good afternoon, folks. I echo everything that Daryl and Susan have said. Very happy to be here and help you kind of navigate the digital landscape. My name is Daniel Spatero. I am the CEO of a company called Buildable. We are software experts, so we're an app development firm. We help some of the most interesting new ventures in the city and some of the largest internet companies on the web build large and complex software products. So throughout the years of running the company, my team and I have seen a lot of different implementations, and we've learned a lot of things that I think can help you guys in the early days of digitization and kind of moving your business online. As Susan mentioned, I'm also one of the co-founders of Distantly. So the platform was built on top of Buildable's technology. So again, I've been a big part of kind of the technological roadmap. So I'm going to jump into a couple e-commerce points, best practices, talk about payments, and a little bit on social media. Thank you. So talking about e-commerce first, e-commerce is a big beast, and for a lot of folks, especially a lot of small businesses that I've talked to, and I think Daryl alluded to it a bit, it's somewhat overwhelming, or it can seem overwhelming, but if you break it down into its smallest parts and you know what to look at, it can become very doable to build a very solid foundation of your e-commerce or your online presence moving from brick and mortar. When we talk about e-commerce, before I get into these verticals, I want to talk about the thing, in my opinion, that actually wraps up all these things, which is something called conversion rate. So for all those who aren't familiar, conversion rate is simply defined as the amount of website visitors that transition into purchasing customers or convert into purchasing customers. So if you have, for example, 100 people visiting your new e-commerce site and 2 of them purchase something, actually put in their payment information and buy, your conversion rate is 2%. Now, this is important for a number of reasons. I think it's important to keep that top level metric as something you grade yourself against to ensure that your experiments are either working or not working. But also it's important to understand the level and the proxies tied to that number. For fashion and beauty companies, specifically as an example, we're talking about product suites that have between a $50 price tag to $300. The average conversion rate between the majority of e-commerce companies out there is somewhere between 1.5 and 1.9%, or sorry, 2.9%. So between 1.5 and 2.9. And in other words, it's pretty low. So what that means and how you have to think about it is obviously when you're building your e-commerce site, when you're starting to experiment and innovate and ideate, don't be discouraged in the early days by lack of sales. Typically, you need at least 100, 200, 300 people to even be on your site for you to start to see the sales roll in based on the math of kind of the industry in that particular vertical. Obviously, there's outliers, higher conversion numbers and lower ones, and it varies by industry. But just keep in mind, conversion rate is a good metric to kind of grade yourself on and to always pay attention to. When you're thinking about conversion rate on these particular 6 verticals, conversion is predicated on some of these things and a few others, but these are the big ones. If we're talking about just generally the cost of entering the market and building your store, Daryl alluded to a little bit. There's a number of players in the market. Shopify, WordPress are some of the ones that we think about first and foremost in the space. A lot of these third-party companies will allow you to get online, typically at $29 a month, to start building and populating online inventory. With the help of Daryl and Digital Main Street and what they're doing with the Shop Here program, you can even get that for free. And it can go as far as a custom build of an e-commerce store where everything is built in-house, and that could be upwards of $10,000 or more. Obviously, in the early days, to experiment, to start with e-commerce, I would highly recommend choosing one of those particular platforms, those third-party platforms, just to get to market quickly and start to again experiment. If you start to experiment, you can start to see what's working, what's not working. You're going to be able to find ways of actually getting people to your site to test different things. And again, I think the most cost efficient and quickest way you can do that, the better. If you're talking about discoverability and people actually finding your store, which is the second big bucket, the second big challenge bucket, people typically talk about SEO or URL structure. SEO is an abbreviation for search engine optimization, and essentially that's just a very complicated way of saying how easy is it for people to find your store online. So if someone either punches in your company name or a keyword that is related to your industry or your business, how easy is it for someone to go from that point of entry in the search query to finding your store in the first, let's say, 10 results on that page? And it actually does mean a lot, and there are things to accelerate and improve your discoverability. One of those things is a very clean URL structure and just making sure that your store pages, the actual web pages that make up the foundation of your store, are clean and relevant and tied to very specifically the products that you're selling. The other big ones, which I find to be the most interesting, are mobile friendliness and speed. So mobile friendliness is sometimes, a synonym is responsiveness, is how good does your store perform on small devices on your phone? And to me, as a person who's been leading a company and a team in software for 6 years, it's been fascinating to see the transition and the speed with which everyone is moving to mobile. And we talk about it, and people, it's on the tips of a lot of people's tongues, but it really is one of those things that is really important. A lot of the big companies, and even some of the small ones that we build applications for, e-commerce or otherwise, we've seen anywhere between 40 and 60% in the most aggressive states essentially be the traffic is coming from mobile devices specifically versus desktop. So in a lot of the cases, almost half or sometimes the majority of your total traffic will be coming from mobile. The problem is that when you're actually building your site, you're on your desktop, you're on your MacBook, you're on your Windows PC. So it's kind of, you don't really, the forefront is desktop in that experience, and it's important to design for that as well. But when you're building it, don't forget to always have your second thought, have it become second nature, and tell yourself or ask yourself, how does this look and feel on mobile? Always check in on the mobile, on a mobile device, whether it's Android or your Apple device, and just make sure that again, that experience is still on brand, it's still seamless, and it's still beautiful. When it comes to the bottom three, also very important, speed. Again, really interesting research on speed. And when we talk about speed, it really comes down to how fast it takes for your page to load, your website to load. So there's a lot of really fascinating research that I encourage you to kind of look up or do some research on offline. But there's things that say, you know, every increment of half a second, so 500 milliseconds, increments of 500 milliseconds have dramatic negative impacts on how many people will convert into customers. So in other words, the longer your page takes to load or your site takes to load, the more friction there is, and typically the less people buy. So it's very, very important that, you know, as you are thinking about your e-commerce, your brand, your store, you're also looking at infrastructure and seeing that it loads really quickly and is really seamless to the people that enter your site. The good news is that with a lot of these third parties, you know, the WordPresses and the Shopifys of the world, they do take care of a lot of that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But just as an operator, in my opinion, I would always pay attention to that. And there's tools that can help you measure those things. One of those is called Google Lighthouse. So you can actually run something through Google that gives you metrics measured on the important things that I just talked about. And I'll just pop into these last few here very quickly. User interface, UI, or user experience, UX. Again, our industry jargon, just to say, to summarize the aesthetics of your site. The biggest things when it comes to user interface, when it comes to e-commerce, is your checkout flow. So always, again, take it from the perspective of the shopper. Pretend when you're building your e-commerce experience and you're kind of getting online for the first time, I encourage you to kind of put the lens on as, you know, from someone who's never been to the store before, and actually try buying something from your site. And give yourself a candid opinion on whether that is an easy experience or whether it's complicated or whether you're missing a piece of information in the middle or whatever. But user experience and user interface in particular is very important when you're trying to get someone to purchase something. So always pay attention to those key parts of the flow that relate to that. And when it comes to software integrations, again, Shopify does an excellent job of this. WordPress has historically, you know, been the forefront of this. But it's this idea of you don't have to do everything yourself. There's a lot of third-party integrations that can connect and plug into your e-commerce store that could give you the functions without having to invest in the actual building of that piece of technology. So you can think of, for example, PayPal. If you are building an e-commerce flow on your site, you want to give other methods of payment to your shoppers. A very traditional integration is PayPal to allow people to pay from their PayPal account. But that can be facilitated in a number of different ways. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do to empower or supercharge your kind of e-commerce or online experience through those third-party integrations. So I recommend you always look at those and think about, you know, the ways to improve that flow through those plugins. If we go to the next slide, please. So talking about, you know, to me, it's again, as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner myself, it's been really interesting to see how the industry has evolved over the last 4 months. We've seen, again, retail just dramatically accelerate. You know, what we thought was going to take 10 years for small businesses, or the majority of small businesses, to think about e-commerce, we're doing that right now. COVID has really, again, just sped up everything, in my opinion, by a decade or more, which is both scary, but it's also quite interesting because it opens up a lot of opportunity for small business owners. It's kind of forced your hand a little bit, but in my opinion, that's a good thing. I think about digitization and, again, creating new channels for your customers to engage with you and purchase from you is always a good thing. We're looking at this graph on the left side of the screen. You know, historically, what this shows is essentially the top e-commerce sites in Canada. And as you can see, that top big line at the, you know, at the top of the graph is Amazon. And I think, again, what's happening right now is Amazon has opened the gates for making people feel comfortable with buying online. You think about 5-10 years ago, that wasn't the case. And again, I think there's still ways of improving it, but Amazon has made it comfortable for people to purchase things online if they haven't felt and touched it and worked with it in a brick and mortar shop. And to me, what's happening is as we move into kind of a post-COVID era, now people are not only comfortable with buying online, but they're also highly incentivized to buy local and to do a lot of their shopping and their purchasing online, but also from their local neighborhood shops. So to me, you can look at what's going on as, again, something that's overwhelming and scary, but I think the way you should look at it is it's an incredible business opportunity. There's a shifting in demand that will favor the small business and less the conglomerate. So if you can match and have technology and platforms that let your customers engage with you, I think, again, you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what comes back in terms of the support you get from customers. And we've seen a lot of this come back from the Distantly community itself. Small businesses, as they're pushing forward in digitization, are seeing different channels of sales and different ways of engaging. And again, I think that's a really, really good thing. Next slide, please. Thank you. Talking about payments, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we have, again, a lot of things to think about when you're picking your network. The caveat is if you're dealing with kind of the inner workings of e-commerce in the beginning, you're going with something like a Shopify or a WordPress or a Wix or whatever to build out, a lot of the times, in almost all cases with these third-party platforms, they come with the network already plugged in. So for example, Shopify, is not doing their payment or their processing. They have Stripe do it. And that's a good and a bad thing. It's really, really good because, again, you don't have to worry about any of it. So you can't really choose your network provider with Shopify per se, but the idea is that it's one less thing you have to think about because, dealing with fraudulent purchases and actually moving capital is a difficult thing. If someone can wrap that up all for you, again, Shopify being an example where someone can buy something on your site, you don't have to worry about the capital moving into your bank account. That's a really good thing. And I think Corinne is going to jump in for a second and just talk about a particular relationship with one of the biggest networks, Ace, and some of the offers that they have with the CFIB.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt in the middle, but I wanted to make sure that the members that are on the line on the webinar are aware of our agreement with Chase and our partnership with Chase. They do provide very low rates in the market. So definitely if there's something, and they do integrate with most of these e-commerce platforms as well, they do have that arm to their organization as well. So I just wanted to put a bit of a plug in that if you are looking at doing something like this, that don't necessarily push them aside, maybe make an inquiry with Chase as well, just to see how it would work for your business and see if you can get those rates even lower. Because of course, the cost of doing e-commerce is a little bit higher rates when it comes to doing these transactions online. So just thank you for the plug. I'll get back to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Corinne. And yeah, it's an interesting caveat as well. If you're looking at one of the big things I talk about, making sure you're looking at protecting against fraudulent purchases and you can handle refunds properly and all that. Well, one of the biggest things is the cost of the transaction. So you're looking at Stripe, for example, or industry average is about 2.9% of the transaction price plus a 30-cent fixed fee per transaction. Again, that's pretty similar across all the networks. And if it is possible to, again, work with the CFIB network to get access to cheaper rates, I mean, at scale, if you can reduce your variable and your fixed fees of transactions, that can equate to a lot of money over the long term. And another point is changing processors later is kind of annoying and a little bit tedious. So it's much better to think about the longevity and the long-term play of your payment network, who you're going to go with, what are the prices, and stick with them because, again, it's just annoying to change later. So do the research now, think about it, and then kind of double down and move forward with your vendor choice. I think I have one more slide, and then I'm going to stop talking. We have, I see this a lot with our new venture partners. So a lot of people will build the technology, right? You build a beautiful e-commerce site, you build a new web or mobile application, and you have the blinders on. You're focusing on bringing this thing to life in the best way you can. A lot of people, again, don't think about, well, how do you bring people to the site once it's live, or how do you bring it to the e-commerce platform once it's live? There's a lot of ways you can do that. Email marketing is a popular one that we've seen a lot of success with for net new business. You can go and do paid ads on something like Google. So if someone searches for a keyword related to your business, even if, again, you're not the first organic result, you can serve yourself up as kind of a paid result, you know, right below the search term. But even just to start, you can start with generic social media platforms just to build the foundation of your community online. And it starts with really great content. The content, in my opinion, is predicated on which platform you believe is the most relevant for your business. Obviously, the big ones are Facebook, Instagram, both owned by Facebook. You have Pinterest, and new to the, well, somewhat new, I think their aggressive growth over the past, let's say, month or 2 or 3 months has been impressive. It's TikTok. In my opinion, the most interesting right now is still Instagram has been, in my opinion, the most impressive in terms of engagement when it comes to small business. It's easy to use. You can do both video and images. And if you can create engaging content, you can actually grow a meaningful audience over the course of, let's say, 6 to 12 months, or at least the inner workings of your business. But I would also explore things that are particularly niche. Pinterest and their board structure could be you know, good depending, and their audience could be good depending on, again, what product you're selling. But I would explore TikTok, and a caveat, we're still exploring TikTok. But I think what's happening there, because of how organic it is very attractive from a small business owner's perspective. So if you have the time to invest in video content, definitely just take a look and peep into how small businesses are marketing on something like TikTok. And I think that's everything from my end. We're going to do a couple questions, I believe, which I think Corinne is going to facilitate, but I'll pop off and jump off if I'm needed.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure who's going to join me on this part, but we do have a couple questions, and I have a couple questions myself. So the first question for either of the two presenters is from Reiner, and he's asking, I'm looking at adding an online print division to my direct mail company. Is it better to use a subdomain or create a new domain? I don't know who would be better able to answer that question.
So can you repeat the question, Corinne?
So he's looking to add an online print division to his direct mail company. So he wants to know whether he should use a subdomain or create a new domain.
I can offer some insight there. Subdomains, or there's pros and cons to both. So if you're doing a new domain, I mean, you're essentially creating a brand new asset. So a completely new domain would mean you have to build up against search rankings for that new domain. You have to, depending on if it's under the same brand or a different brand, come up with a new identity. So there's, again, I'm not a big fan of changing domains per new business arms. I think if you've built out and you spent some time growing an audience that is, you know, on your core, keep them there. And add a subdomain. And a lot of technology companies, whether software or hardware or what have you, leverage the subdomain in a lot of creative ways. The only thing is, keep in mind that I believe, don't quote me on this, but from my experience, I do believe that subdomains are also treated as separate domains in the eyes of Google. So, and a lot of people don't know that. So if you're adding a subdomain, you still, again, it will not be favored as positively or at the same volume as your core domain in the eyes of Google when it comes to SEO or discoverability. My recommendation, if you can, would be to do on your core domain, but do a / and then the name of your new business arm. So it's actually within your same environment. You know, customers can still find it perhaps through a hyperlink on your webpage. But if you can keep things within your core domain, not even on a subdomain, I believe that there's a lot more marketing value to that, and it would save you a lot of hassle down the road.
Great. So what about, like, how does a small business differentiate itself online? I mean, often small businesses pride themselves in being sort of providing that personal touch and being more customer focused. And, you know, so how do you compete as a smaller company and differentiate yourself on Amazon, which obviously is going to dominate, but still, you know, and still give that sort of personal feel? Do you have any advice on how businesses should do that in the digital world?
Well, totally. I think the one thing that small businesses will always have over big conglomerates is a quicker touch point to the consumer. I mean, when you're small, you can still have full control over the majority of your customer community. You can, as an owner, still spend a lot of the time directly communicating with your customers. And that's just a disadvantage of scale. When you get bigger, it's difficult to do that. So in my opinion, as a small business, those touch points you have to aggressively attack. You have to always be involved with your consumers. Yeah, during the build process of your e-commerce or new things that you're releasing, and post when you're starting to sell new things and releasing new products and doing all those things. Bring your customers into that process as early and as active as you can, as frequently as you can, because that feedback will be the difference between an assumption that you think is going to work and something that is actually working, right? In my opinion, and what at Buildable, what we always proclaim is get to market as soon as possible, get something in the hands of your customers, get their feedback as quick as possible, and start that iterative loop. And again, I think that will always be an advantage of small business. So to me, you differentiate by a great product that you know your customers are always loving because you're talking to them a lot.
Great, thanks. Thanks. Can I have one more question, or?
I'm thinking we might want to save it to the end, just because we're already at 5:37 and we have quite a bit more to go, and I want to make sure we leave enough time for Stacy as well.
Great, and I want to make sure we can get to some questions, so we'll certainly do that. All right, thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Jennifer.
Absolutely.
All right, so I will try to zip through this stuff as quickly as possible, just in the interest of time, and then also leaving enough time for Stacy to talk about her experience with Distantly and just kind of how she's been managing through COVID. So some of this will be a repeat for those of you that were online with us on July 9th, but in the interest of setting the stage for everyone, I'll just review what crowdfunding is. Next slide, please. So crowdfunding is a method of raising capital through the collective effort of family, friends, customers, and investors. In other words, you're taking a lot of small sums of money from people that support your business, and in aggregate, it equals an amount of money that is pretty material and significant to your business. There's a few really well-known benefits to crowdfunding. First and foremost, immediate cash flow. So most of the crowdfunding platforms, which we'll go over in a second, the money actually flows back to your connected bank account within 48 hours. So you get that almost immediate cash flow back to your account, which is really unique to what crowdfunding has to offer. It's also non-dilutive, which means it's not going to be, it's not going to be like an equity agreement or a typical investor agreement where you have to give up some ownership in order to get that investment back into your business. This absolutely does not touch on anything to do with your ownership structure whatsoever. So that's what we call non-dilutive, and it's not a loan. So there's no interest. You don't pay it back. It's literally just funds coming in to support your project or your business. So next slide, please. Okay, so we won't go through this in detail because you will all have access, I think, to these slides after the fact, but I did want to touch on a few of the more common crowdfunding platforms that are on the market, and we'll get into Distantly, I think, towards the end. And the way that I think makes sense to go through this is to kind of highlight some of the generic categorizations around each platform. And so you'll see some of them kind of have target market or a different fee structure, or they tend to be focused on different types of projects. And so as you're thinking about this alternative form of financing, which is crowdfunding, you really kind of have to complement that thought with what kind of business do I have, which you should obviously be able to answer very well, but also what am I looking to fund? Is it a specific project that you have in mind? Is it some sort of cause, or is it your business overall? Because each of them kind of focus on a different part of that market. And a good one to highlight would be like Mighty Cause. Well, they focus really on nonprofits. So if that's not you, that's probably not the best fit for your business. Kickstarter and GoFundMe by far are the most popular ones on the market. And so with them, you'll get quite a bit of name recognition, but at the same time, most of them are shorter term projects. Often individuals are going onto those platforms to raise money for, something personal that they're trying to financially achieve. And they're not necessarily always well suited for businesses in general, let alone small businesses. And that's, I think, where Distantly can actually fill a really interesting niche. We have some of the most favorable, I guess, economics on the market, other than the transaction fees that are connected our connected Stripe account takes, which Daniel already mentioned, which is typically around 3%, all the funds actually flow back to the business. And so that's particularly unique within the economic environment for crowdfunding platforms. We're also Canadian, and we started entirely with the mindset of helping small businesses across Canada. So in the interest of leaving some time, I'll leave this here, and you guys can kind of go through and see which platforms are potentially best for you. So Distantly today, as Susan had mentioned at the very beginning, was launched at the very start of COVID-19 to financially support local businesses as we moved into lockdown. And it was really designed for customers to continue to support your business even though it was closed. And so that would, and today we have about, I think 1,000 to 1,500 businesses across Canada on the platform, and they really range in sector and type of business. So it's, everything from dance studios to small restaurants and bars to little shops and apothecaries to coffee shops to salons, fashion houses. It's really everything. So we're not, we don't preference any particular type of business. We're really wanting to be a platform that's agnostic to everyone that's out there. And that's also part of the reason why we take our relationship with CFIB very seriously, because of the diversity across the membership base across Canada. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just spend maybe 30 seconds quickly going through how a business can actually open a page on Distantly so that you can start to receive financial support from people that are wanting to support you. So if you go to distantly.ca in your browser, you're going to be brought up to a screen that looks exactly like this. And in the top right-hand corner, there's a little button that says Add My Business. When you go to that button, Add My Business, next slide, please. You'll be prompted to insert a bunch of information about your business, but most importantly, your bank account information, and that's so that the funds can flow back to you. And with Distantly, most of our businesses see their financial contributions hit their bank account within 48 hours, which is really, really fast. Next slide, please. Once you sign up your page, or once you sign up your business onto the Distantly platform, you're going to be given a welcome email and a page, which then you can go forth and share within your existing social media, within your websites and domains that you might already have, or just blast out to your customer base however you may currently engage with them today. And I think that's actually a really good point in time for me now to hand over the microphone to Stacy from Totem, since she's already on the page, and this is what her original share page actually looked like. So Stacy, over to you, and you have plenty of time, so feel free to talk about your experience. Oh, Stacy, are you there? There you go.
Hi. Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for tuning in, and thanks to CFIB for having me and for Distantly. And I've been sitting here taking notes because I'm actually learning much more about things that I can do with my business. And as was mentioned, we got on Distantly right away. Susan and I were friends, and we happened to run into each other, and she talked about launching this new product, which was Distantly, and this new website. And I have to say, our experience with it has been fantastic. And we have a video. So how about we play the video, and I'll just say that the video was shot right after we closed. So if I look quite sad, as all business owners, you will understand that it was recorded kind of a few days after we had closed, and we were coming up with this concept of how are we going to stay in business. So let's play the video, and then we can go from there. I feel like we might be having some sound issues on the video.
Yes, so I'm just reaching out to our organizers to see if they can fix that. I'm not sure if we'll be able to, though.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's not worry about it. Let's just keep moving along. So the good news is, as you can see from this slide, in 6 days with our business, we were able to raise, close to $10,000. We are now over $10,000. Towards the end of the campaign, and what a relief. And to put that in perspective, Totem Life Science, our business, has 5 locations throughout the GTA. our monthly expenses are, you know, over $500,000 a month. And as most business owners would understand, you pay the majority of your expenses at the first of the month. So that's your rent, and for us, that's our equipment leases. So closing on March 16th becomes devastating. And for a business our size, when the government announces programs like they're going to give you, you know, potentially $40,000, which we qualified for all of those programs, but that's just not enough. And we really, at that time point, didn't know if we would survive as a business. Distantly was a huge bright spot for us with our business. We were able to reach out to all of our clients and kind of reconnect with them, which, you know, to Daniel's point, it's all about the relationship. And Distantly provided us with a really good option. Let's go to the next slide. I think the email is on there. Yeah, so we composed an email that went out to all of our clients. And I have to say also, we have fantastic clients. So during the shutdown, we were being contacted by clients who were saying, how can we help? And Distantly, again, gave us a really good, safe way to be able to help for our clients, to be able to help us. And that was a big relief to us, but it was also a way for us to maintain those relationships, which I think that is crucial to the survival of any business through this pandemic. Within 2 days, we had pivoted to an online presence. So we started doing physiotherapy, chiropractic, personal training, and all of our classes online. But again, we had many options then for people to do things with us. So some people weren't comfortable doing online, and they said, okay, we still want to help, and Distantly gave us that option. Let's move to the next slide. And again, this just kind of talks about some of the things that we did and some of the things that we are working on now. This pandemic, as was stated before, has provided our business with a massive opportunity. We had always planned to go digital. We'd always planned to do virtual appointments. You know, we always had people calling in kind of saying, you know, I'm feeling sick today and I know I have an appointment booked, but maybe I shouldn't come in. And now all of a sudden, within a couple of days, we had to make that option a reality. And moving forward with our business, we know that things are going to look very different. And for example, if there's any type of a second wave, or, you know, if, fingers crossed this never happens, but if we have to close down again, with these platforms, we know that we're now ready. We're ready to connect with our clients and our patients, and we are ready to build on those relationships. We're opening up a digital wellness platform, which is a whole new stream of business for Totem, and it's very exciting to work on it through this pandemic. And one of the other bright spots about doing these virtual platforms and connecting with our clients and patients virtually is that it's something that we can have control over. And I'm sure that you felt this way as a business owner during the pandemic. There were so many questions that you didn't have answers to. For example, when are you opening? How are you opening? And a lot of that was dictated by government recommendations. And so we didn't have control over that. But our digital platform gives us a space that we have complete control over. We can sell things through there the way that we want to. And we can say, yes, we're launching this class at this time, and we know that it's going to happen. And really, as an entrepreneur, you're always just trying to say, you know, what's the next thing that I can do? What's the next, way that we can generate revenue for our business? And I found that working through the Distantly platform, it really allowed us to have a safe, efficient space to do that, and not to mention with the great help from the people working within the platform. Sometimes the days could seem overwhelming, and Distantly was wonderful in being patient with us. If I could manage on a digital platform, anyone can manage on a digital platform. And I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any direct questions about, what it's like to be a business owner on the platform.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. It's a great story, and I'm pleased that you were able to come and share your experience with the Distantly platform. I do have a couple of questions on the Distantly platform, and then we may do a couple of the other questions that we weren't able to get to before. But one of the questions, not just for you, but also generally, is about how you get people to, like, customers onto the Distantly platform. So how does it you actually communicate to customers that you're looking for this funding or that you're part of this sort of program? So I guess that's the question, because I think as a customer, if you go to the Distantly website, it's not that clear. So I'm wondering if you can share your experience, or maybe Jen, you can give us a bit more clarity around that.
This is an excellent question, and I think it's something that we've all learned during this pandemic, is that you need to be connected to your customers digitally. It is a huge advantage. We are very lucky that because we're healthcare and fitness, we have an email list that's fairly up to date, because it has to be because of the patients coming through the door. So we started with an email, and our email list that was sent out went out to about 10,000 names. We also followed that up with a big campaign on Facebook and on Instagram, and we boosted all of those posts. So we also invested to reach people who weren't following us. And obviously, as you can see, you know, raising $10,000 with virtually no cost, all that effort was absolutely worth it. And at the same time, the learning was, we talked to our team about this, is to make sure we are always updating our email list and we're always updating our contact information to our clients, because that is extremely valuable information to have. So that's how we went about doing that.
So I might just, there was a question that just came in just as you were speaking, which I think is probably one that others are thinking about. So maybe I'll throw it out there. But and they prefaced it, this is Marcy, she prefaced by saying, I don't mean this to be rude, but how does it not come across as holding your hand out for money? What's the perception out there? I think that is something I think a lot of small business owners do worry a little bit about, right? In terms of asking, you know, their customers to help them out in that regard. So how did you get over that, or did you have that perception too?
We absolutely did have that perception, and we had a lot of, you know, deep in our heart conversations about it. My husband is my business partner, so when we first thought about it, we thought, really, what are we doing? And because we've never done that before, you know, we've never been through a pandemic before, and the email that we sent out gave many options of things for people to do. So one thing was, you know, book a virtual class or book a virtual training session. And I guess the idea was that we knew that there were people out there that wanted to support us. And at the same time, I thought to myself, I also feel like I want to support the small businesses in my neighborhood, because I know what they're going through right now. So I want to support my hairdresser, and I want to support my local restaurant. And I would be happy to go on a site and be able to just send them some money directly. And I think that even with the group with Distantly, we talked about that, and we said, you know, part of being an entrepreneur is not being afraid to ask for things that you need. And we just went with that. And we said it's uncomfortable, but there are many moments in our lives where we're uncomfortable, and surviving a pandemic is definitely one of those moments. So we just kind of went for it, and we had huge success. We did not have anyone write back anything negative saying you're asking for a handout. And it is possibly how we worded the email. And at the same time, we offered free things for people who needed them. So people whose lives, like first responders and the frontline healthcare workers, we felt that it was important that we also contributed for free things that we could that might have value to other people, so that we were also paying things forward as best we could.
Great, Stacey, thank you.
I just wanted to jump in 2 seconds on that one, because I think one of the things that's fundamentally important and really behind Distantly and our ethos is Small businesses are vital, crucial, important parts of our community. So as consumers, if you're walking down Main Street and 75% of Main Street is closed, nobody's happy. So we all need to pull together, and this is how Distantly came together, really is an opportunity for communities to support local communities. So I think, Stacey, you answered that question beautifully, but I think it's on us. Like, that's how we started. I was actually trying to give money to my hairdresser and my favorite local restaurant, and they couldn't take it. So that's how we started the platform.
Great, thank you, Susan. I'm wondering, we have about 5 minutes left, and I do have a number of questions more from the first half of the session. I'm wondering if we'd be okay if we went back to some of those questions, so we can address some of the questions that were coming in earlier.
Absolutely. I'll just quickly mention.
Sounds
I think
great.
Daryl had to drop off, so I think it's just myself, Susan, Stacey, and Daniel at this point.
Okay. So is somebody able to answer those questions from the first half?
Probably, yeah. But if it was going to Daryl, probably send it over to Daniel.
Okay. All right. So the first one I wanted to ask about is Ryan was asking, our current website and email provider is GoDaddy. And I noticed you didn't recommend them. Is it worth looking at Shopify or some other platform or using the GoDaddy e-commerce platform?
So, I mean, it really depends. Like I think Daryl mentioned it during his section, which just said that a lot of these platforms are very similar in their feature offerings. I don't want to give any advice without knowing more about the actual setup. But I will say, though, that GoDaddy, again, subjective opinion, in some cases is more regarded as a very impressive registrar, like a good place to buy domains and all that. However, actually running their e-commerce infrastructure, they are not, they're not, again, regarded as a forefront leader. And I think the reason why Shopify and the WordPresses and even Wix, the Wixes of the world, have shown to be a little bit more beneficial for small businesses is because a lot of these platforms come with front-end templates already built in, and a big part of growing an online brand is making it look good and making it function and making it high performant and all that. And in my opinion, it's just helpful to again do research on the differences that are available, because each platform comes with I think, again, similar in terms of broad stroke features, but nuances on specific things. And Shopify, for example, has a template and a third-party app community that could be helpful. And WordPress has that as well. So I would, again, do research on them, but it is very specific and unique to the particular business case.
Great.
That being said, if you do have your domain name through GoDaddy, you can absolutely still build your website and your online presence through Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, and all that. So you don't feel as though you need to drop your current domain with GoDaddy in order to do all the rest. That's not the case at all. All of those website building platforms can take in any registered domain name. There's a fairly straightforward way to do it.
Great.
So we're going to go just a couple minutes over, if that's okay, so I can get to a couple more questions. So that'd be great. So Jim is asking, for small business that is regionally based, like a restaurant, what are the top 3 things you recommend as an e-commerce strategy?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I think about, again, like keeping the consumer hat on, is making sure that something as simple as like your menu and your offering is readily available, and then also connected from an ordering standpoint. The last, I guess, one of the most inconvenient experiences that a consumer can have with a restaurant platform is having to look at multiple different screens in order to actually make that transaction happen. And so if there's a way to look at your menu and then also immediately decide what you want to order, and it flows through the same kind of infrastructure and interface, that's something that is very user friendly and would be very helpful from that user experience element as you start to build out and think about the longevity of your digital presence. And then I think if you take a look at, I'm not sure what the demographics of this particular restaurant actually is, but there's a ton of activity, as Daniel touched on social media, within the hospitality industry, and specifically restaurants and bars, rebuilding their presence and their brand awareness on Instagram. And so if you don't have an active Instagram profile, I would highly recommend that you pursue that. And even if you're not good at Instagram yourself, that's okay. There's individual like contractors you can hire, independent contractors that are social media and digital media specialists. I've seen them as low as like $500 a month, sometimes even less. And there's also other platforms like Hootsuite, which was on the slide, that can kind of be your aggregated social and digital media manager. So it really depends on what your budget is, or by all means, do it yourself. But those would be kind of two things that immediately come to mind.
Great, thank you. That's great. So Pierre is asking, what's the better channel to market your new product on if you have a limited budget to spend monthly?
I would say Instagram again. Sorry, Daniel, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I mean, again, it definitely, when you're looking at social channels, I don't know if you agree, Jen, but in my opinion, it is very, very product and customer specific. Like each social channel or distribution channel, as you're looking at it, in my opinion, look at them and the relevance of them based on the relevance of or the tie and similarity between your customer base and the people typically on those channels. So if you're looking at, for example, Pinterest, they have a common demographic of I think their majority or their main demographic is females between 25 and 45. Again, I don't know if that's actually accurate, but that's what I would guess. For TikTok, again, similar demographic, kind of Gen Z people that are very video agnostic. That's the audience on there. So social media to me is a way of attracting attention to your assets, your online assets. And it really depends on, again, the most relevant eyeballs. So look at the audiences that you think are most appealing, and also look at kind of content style. Are you better at producing standalone image content? Are you capable of doing video content? It also depends on the medium with which you're best at producing. So I would say focus on that and tie that to as much as you can to the actual product or your customer community.
But the cost of actually marketing on one of those platforms, is it kind of similar, and you can sort of control the cost?
There's a huge range around it. So touching on Instagram specifically, and I think photos and taking photos is a fairly easy and straightforward way to build that kind of imagery and presence online. But for example, on Instagram, you can run photo specific promotions that you can decide how long you want to run them for, how many days. And for instance, and you can actually be very specific in targeting targeting a demographic all the way down to like age, income, gender, neighborhoods, everything. But for example, if you wanted something that was pretty broad reaching and you wanted to run it for 6 days, it's probably going to cost you around $50. Like it's quite, and there's a toggle around that. So if you want a larger audience and a wider reach, they make it very, very obvious how much you're going to be paying over the course of that campaign. And you get all sorts of analytics on the back of that around how many people actually looked at the post, how many you can actually decide whether you want the person's engagement to link back to a website or to message you directly. And so there's a number of different ways you can kind of train the engagement as you're setting up that campaign so that you can watch kind of what the ROI or the return on your investment is for that particular campaign. But they start out like within, under $50 for the first, say, week for the campaigns.
And I'll just add one more thing that I think is super important. There's also really, really significant to isolate the difference between paid, organic, and earned media. So like Jen was just an excellent description of kind of paid traffic or advertising that you can do on these channels. In my opinion, don't forget about kind of natural organic content that's not paid. So start by experimenting with content on your own pages, posting to those pages and trying to kind of grassroots build the community and your natural followers on those platforms, because you're going to see again what people are liking more in terms of content style. And then once you've kind of built and you've got comfortable with creating content, that's when you can amplify with paid. So again, Instagram, depending on, again, the product has been successful for a lot of kind of D2C customer or brands. TikTok, we talked about a little bit. But when it comes to kind of amplification and paid, let's not forget Google. AdWords is, you can do some really interesting things with AdWords and finding really underpriced words. So now you're going with just like non-visual content, like Google Ads or just text. So there's still a lot of creativity behind producing a good kind of Google paid ad. So I'd also look at that, but kind of look at those as two different nodes. Look at organic and paid and earned as different, and kind of holistically produce kind of content with all three in mind.
Okay, I have two more quick questions. One is
I'll stay here as long as you need me, Corinne.
Okay, from Alex. Alex is curious to know what yielded the best results: email marketing, social, or remarketing?
That's a tough one too. Again, it depends on what they're selling.
Okay.
Jen, I'll let you jump in unless you want me to take this.
Thanks.
I can take it.
I think like it depends on who the demographic is, right? That's it's kind of the bread and butter for I think all of these answers. Is the more you have kind of data and analytics around who your actual demographic is that's currently buying and that who you want to be buying in the future, that's where you can better target where to spend your dollars. I mean, social media marketing versus email marketing, those are hitting two very different types of consumers.
Yeah.
So
kind of make your answer dependent on who you're actually trying to win business from.
I would also add, I've done just operationally, we've experimented with a lot of both. I would say that email marketing is very saturated right now, with how the internet service providers and the different internet managers have set up spam filters and all that. It's more difficult now to get in your customer's inbox without question, and it's going to continue to get harder. That being said, I think that there's something really beautiful about email creativity, especially when it comes to like net new business acquisitions. So if you're doing cold campaigns, if you are, again, fine tune your marketing skills and incorporate humor or incorporate a highly impactful blog article, I think there's a lot of ways that you can encourage people to listen to you. And then that's not even talking about engaging your existing email list like Stacy talked about a little bit, right? So she had cultivated over the course of the many years of business that she's successfully been serving her customers, she's grown a huge list of folks that love the business. So if you're not doing that and you're not leveraging and continuing to market to those people, which you're marketing to existing customers, but there's still tremendous value there, you're also missing out. So I'd say like email marketing, though saturated and archaic, I still think there's a lot of value there, in addition to kind of social media. So I'm a big proponent of email marketing. I would encourage you to kind of explore it.
Okay, great.
One other thing I'll add so that we can keep going back on social versus email is influencers are really, really important nowadays too, which are individuals that can help promote your brand for you. And that's really something that's much more specific to social media marketing.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So Ryan's asking, is a third-party monthly SEO service still valuable for organic placements? I've heard from some that it is not what it used to be. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, I would love if you could repeat the question if you wouldn't mind.
Not at all. So Ryan's saying, is a third-party monthly SEO service still valuable for organic placement?
I think that there is a lot of misspending with third-party SEO vendors. I think a lot of it is, I love this word, fugazi. Like, I think a lot of it is third-party vendors saying that they're reorganizing URL structure. But on the back end, if you really look at what they're doing, they're perhaps plugging in a couple things like plugins on your WordPress. And so, again, I think it's very vendor specific. Not to say that there's not a lot of tremendous consultants out there that really do provide a lot of value when it comes to SEO. But I would say be very careful with your vendor selection and make sure that you can actually see tangible results of what they've done for previous clients, either before working with them and after, so that you can reasonably gauge like how much value they can provide. But I do think that there's a lot of overspending or misspending when it comes to SEO. So I'd be careful.
Okay. So there's still more coming in, but we'll just do one more and then we'll wrap it up. Sure. So Ron is asking, what do you think of Facebook Messenger ads?
Jen, social. I'll let you go first on that one.
As a consumer, I find them very annoying.
Okay. Direct. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, like, again, I think they're new and they're shiny. And from a marketer's perspective, that does provide value because people are unaccustomed to them. versus, you know, banner ads on a website. People barely look at those anymore. And again, advertising mediums, I think you see that deterioration of success. Messenger ads, I think, are annoying to certain consumers. I still think that there's probably a positive ROI for a lot of the companies that are doing and using it really well, and perhaps finding a way to not make it annoying. But I probably would imagine that the majority of them are, again, experimenting and kind of are leading to the wrong result, which is making people frustrated with it. So it again, like any marketing vehicle, I think it depends on how you engage it and how you do it, and how the consumer will kind of perceive it when you do it. At the end of the day, if it provides value and the product is such a good fit for the consumer, it's just an easier way to reach them. So again, it depends on kind of how you do it.
The other thing on Facebook, I think in general, is that the demographic on Facebook is older than the demographic on certainly on TikTok. TikTok is Gen Z. That's like your early 20s and teenagers and younger folks. You know, there's not a lot of Gen Z on Facebook, and there's actually fewer and fewer millennials, which is like your, you know, 25 to 37-year-old kind of category. Fewer and fewer of them are also on Facebook. So again, like, think back to your demographic. If you're targeting kind of later 30s and older, that might be a better place to be spending some time and money. But again, like, just relate it back to the demographic that you're targeting, and if it is on the younger end of this, the very young end of the spectrum, like, probably not the best use of your time or money to be on Facebook, other than from like an informational standpoint, to make sure you just have that box checked.
Well, thank you. There are still more, but I think it's time to cut it off. We've gone way over. So there obviously was a lot of interest on this front. So I want to thank you, Daniel, Jennifer, Susan, Stacy. I know your other colleague left, so let's please extend our thanks as well. It's been very informative. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to give our helpline a call. We can certainly reach out to the folks at Distantly and at as well as Daniel, and to get the answers if you still think there's some that need to be answered. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. And with that, we will end the webinar.
Thanks guys.
Everyone.